I'm Natalie Carter, 30 years old, and the night my brother stood in front of 200 people to raise a toast, mocking the company I built from nothing. I didn't speak, didn't cry, didn't even blink. I just turned heels, clicking against the ballroom floor, and walked straight out into the night while champagne flutes clinked behind me. That moment didn't crush me, but it did remind me brutally where I stood in the Carter family. A brilliant brother with degrees on the wall, a father who saw tradition as gospel, and me, the so-called dropout who dared to build something different. What none of them knew that evening, what not even my father had asked, was that my so-called failing company had just been valued at $99 million. By the next morning, their world was going to look very different. Before I go any further, let me know where you're listening from in the comments, and hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever had someone underestimate what you're really capable of. I grew up in a house where achievement was currency, and my older brother Brandon always had a full account. He was the kind of kid who made honor roll in middle school, ran mock trials in high school, and secured a full ride to Harvard without breaking a sweat. Our father, Robert Carter, built Carter Strategies from the ground up, an old-school consulting firm that advised Fortune 500s, and he expected both of us to fall neatly into line. Brandon did. He wore the tailored suits, learned to speak in quarterly projections by the time he was 20, and earned every approving nod our father handed out. But our mother, Elaine, she saw something different in me. She was soft-spoken, the kind of woman who believed that intelligence had more to do with curiosity than credentials. While Brandon was learning to command a room, I was in the garage with her clumsily soldering wires onto cheap circuit boards, trying to build a voice-activated lamp that barely blinked. She never called it silly. She called it potential. Innovation, she used to say, doesn't come with instructions. I carried that with me through middle school, through high school, and all the way to Stanford, where I majored in computer science with a focus on machine learning. But everything changed during my second year. She passed suddenly, a stroke that no one saw coming. The house fell quiet, but not the good kind. The kind of quiet where even your breathing feels like a mistake. I started skipping lectures not because I didn't care, but because I couldn't sit still in rooms that had nothing to do with the world shifting outside. What I loved most, adaptive systems predictive modeling, was evolving faster than the curriculum. I saw companies launching prototypes while we were still learning yesterday's syntax. So I made the hardest decision I've ever made. I left. When I called my father to tell him there was no anger, just disappointment delivered like a verdict. "This is why you'll never be what Brandon is," he said. But I had already lined up a contract job with a small AI startup in Austin. It wasn't glamorous. I worked weekends, slept in the office more times than I care to admit, but it taught me more than any class ever had. 6 years later, I launched Novatech, a company built around adaptive virtual assistants that could actually learn and adjust to real human communication. I hired a small team. Marcus became my CTO. Rachel left her agency job to run our marketing. It wasn't easy, but it was ours. The morning before Brandon's party, Marcus walked into my office with a grin I hadn't seen in months. "Q3's in," he said. "We're up 22% from last quarter." Henderson's rollout crushed expectations. I let myself smile, not the polite kind, but the kind that comes from knowing you built something real. That feeling carried me all the way until my phone rang. It was my father. "You haven't forgotten Brandon's promotion dinner, have you?" he asked, his tone like a paperweight. I hadn't remembered it truthfully. My brother was being named the youngest VP in Carter Strategies history, the event black tie naturally. "Wear something appropriate this time," he added. I bit down the words that wanted to come out and just said, "I will." That night, I wore a navy dress I'd been saving for a moment that mattered. I clipped on my mother's sapphire earrings, the last gift she ever gave me. As I looked at myself in the mirror, I didn't see a dropout. I saw a woman who'd fought for every inch of ground she stood on. When I pulled up to the Carter estate, marble steps, glowing chandeliers, valet lines down the block, I reminded myself I had earned my place here. Even if no one in that room would say it. I should have known better. That night wasn't a celebration. It was a performance. And by the time Brandon stood up to speak, champagne in hand, I already knew something was coming. I just didn't know how far he'd go. Brandon's voice carried across the ballroom like he'd rehearsed every syllable. I was still settling into my seat when he cleared his throat and smiled toward the stage lights. Many of you know my sister Natalie has been pursuing a tech venture since her early departure from Stanford. He didn't need to say more, the tone was enough. A few heads turned toward me. I kept my eyes down. What you may not know, he continued, is that her company has been struggling to meet key delivery benchmarks while burning through investor capital at an alarming rate. The room, once buzzing with casual laughter and clinking glassware, fell into a sharp, uncomfortable silence. I didn't speak. I didn't even blink. His words floated in the air like a warning not just to me, but to every guest sipping their champagne. So tonight, Brandon added with the calm certainty of someone who'd already decided how this would end, I'm offering to acquire Novatech for 20% of its current valuation, to help her exit gracefully before things worsen. My father, standing nearby, raised his glass and nodded. Very generous son, he said. The family takes care of its own. I placed my napkin beside the untouched plate, stood without a word, and walked out. The next morning, I sat in Novatech's break room, hands wrapped around a mug of coffee that had long gone cold. Rachel leaned against the counter, arms crossed, waiting for me to say something. I finally shook my head. It doesn't matter what Brandon says at some fancy event. The numbers speak for themselves. Before she could respond, Marcus stepped in. He didn't say good morning. 3 investors pulled out, he said quietly. Redstone, Northwest Sullivan, and Kensington. I looked up. All of them. He nodded. They cited concerns about stability, said they heard things family sources. The buzzer on the wall phone startled us both. Olivia, my assistant, poked her head in. Diana Monroe on line 1, she said. I pressed the speaker button. Natalie, what is going on? Diana's voice was clipped all sharp edges. I've had 3 calls this morning asking if Novatech is circling the drain. What happened? I explained Brandon's speech, the way the room turned, how fast the story spread. Diana sighed. In tech, perception is reality. If people believe you're failing, you are, whether it's true or not. I stared at the floor for a moment. Hold the line, I said to Olivia. Team meeting in 30. At 10 a.m., I stood in front of our full staff developers, engineers, analysts, interns, and did my best to sound steady. I walked them through the Westfield metrics, highlighted our growth, and downplayed the noise from outside. I reminded them what we'd built. As they filed out, Olivia returned. Eric Sullivan's here, she said. In the lobby. My jaw tightened. Send him in. Eric walked in with a folder under his arm, the expression on his face unreadable. I've always respected your vision, he said, but there are some things I need to understand. Is this about Brandon? I asked. He hesitated. Among others. I turned my screen toward him, pulled up our financial dashboard. 18 months of runway even without the Westfield deal. We're stable. He studied the numbers, nodded slowly. This looks better than I expected. But rumors stick. He left without a firm answer. An hour later, my phone rang again. Thomas Bennett from Westfield was on the line. We've heard some chatter, he said, choosing his words carefully. Concerns about Novatech's ability to deliver. I explained everything. Our architecture, our process, the timelines. He thanked me for the transparency, but said the board would need time to review. That afternoon, a letter arrived formally typed, cold in tone, with the Carter Strategies letterhead at the top. It was an official acquisition offer, 22% of Novatech's valuation, dated the day before the party. I stared at the signature line and felt something shift. Brandon hadn't just made a spontaneous toast. He had mapped this out step by step. Back at my apartment, I slammed a family photo face down on the coffee table. The glass cracked along the edge. Rachel sat beside me, picking up the shards without a word. My phone buzzed. Marcus again. Found something, he said. I'm coming over. 20 minutes later, he opened his laptop and turned the screen toward me. Zenith Global signed an $80 million contract with Carter Strategies 6 months ago, he said. AI logistics management. I frowned. They don't have that tech. He nodded. But look at the specs. He pulled up a second file, our Westfield proposal. It was nearly identical. They copied it, he said. They pitched your technology as their own, but they can't deliver without it. We sat in silence for a moment. The realization landed hard. Brandon wasn't sabotaging Novatech because I was a rival. He was doing it because I was the solution to a crisis he couldn't fix. That night I didn't go home. I sat at my desk under the dim glow of my monitor watching lines of code scroll by while the building emptied around me. I didn't notice the hours pass until Olivia set a fresh cup of coffee on my desk the next morning. I took a sip. It was already cold. At 8:00 sharp, Marcus came in. First National's pulling our credit line. They're calling it a sector-wide reassessment. I looked at him. Before or after Brandon called them, he didn't answer. I grabbed my coat and drove straight to my father's office. The receptionist glanced up but didn't stop me. I pushed open the office door. Same leather chairs, same scent of wood polish. My father didn't even look up. "Natalie," he said, "I assume this isn't a social call. You're helping Brandon tear down everything I've built." He finally set down his pen. "Brandon is preserving family interests." I stepped forward. He sold tech he doesn't have, and now he needs my company to bail him out. He met my eyes. "We're offering you a graceful exit. That's more than most competitors get." I didn't sit. "You're not offering guidance. You're dismantling me piece by whispering into every ear you can find." He didn't raise his voice. Traditional leadership recognizes when someone needs help. I didn't reply. When I got back to the office, Rachel was waiting. Catherine Morgan from Data Mines was here, made a soft offer. I nodded, exhausted. Another one. I opened my inbox. Garner Technologies had sent a message. "We're pausing discussions pending clarity on your internal stability." I picked up the phone and called their CEO directly. "Is this about our numbers?" I asked. "No," he said. "Your metrics are strong. There's just concern." He didn't have to explain. Marcus stepped in again. "We have another problem, the adaptive learning model. It's not scaling. The output is unstable." I looked up. "How long to fix it?" He hesitated. "Could be days, could be weeks." That night, I called an emergency team meeting. I tried to stay calm as I walked them through the issue. Tyler, one of our junior devs, raised his hand. "My roommates are at Linker Systems," he said. "They're hiring. Big bonuses." No one said it, but I could feel it. Morale was breaking. The next day, I had lunch with Diana. "You need a backup plan," she said. "You think I should sell?" I asked. She paused. "I think you should protect what matters most." That afternoon, I started making calls, smaller investors, higher rates. The terms were rough, but they'd buy us a little time. Then Marcus walked in again. "Westfield wants another meeting. I think Brandon got to them too." I didn't respond. I was already reaching for my bag. The part of me that once believed in merit and fairness was learning something new. This wasn't about business anymore. It was about survival. I didn't go home that night. The office was quiet after hours, except for the soft hum of the servers and the tap of my keyboard as I tried to think through the mess. I wasn't coding with purpose, just scrolling through the back end of our platform, opening files I already knew by heart. I stayed until the sun came up. By the time Olivia walked in and set a fresh coffee on my desk, I hadn't moved. At 8 Huzuras, Marcus stepped into the doorway. "They're pulling the credit line," he said. "First National says it's part of a sector-wide reassessment." I didn't ask if Brandon had spoken to them. I already knew. That afternoon, I sat across from Dr. Chen in her small clinic office. Rachel had booked the appointment without asking me, then drove me there herself. I hadn't slept more than 3 hours a night in weeks. I was down 8 pounds and living off caffeine and sheer will. Dr. Chen frowned as she scanned my chart. "Your blood pressure is up," she said. "You're overworked and underrested. This isn't sustainable." She handed me a prescription and told me to eat real meals to sleep to stop pretending I was fine. I nodded, but we both knew I wouldn't follow through. Back at the office, the air felt heavier. Olivia was quiet typing notes from investor calls. Marcus looked exhausted. By mid-morning, we'd lost another team member. Jessica, one of our senior engineers, submitted her resignation. Greg followed that afternoon. Michelle's email came in by 5 Azuras. All 3 had been approached by Carter Strategies, signing bonuses, higher salaries, guaranteed contracts. "They're not even hiding it anymore," Marcus said. "They're picking us apart." That evening we met with Alexander Mitchell for a demo we'd scheduled weeks ago. We were supposed to show progress on the adaptive learning model, but it crashed within minutes. Alexander stayed professional, said he understood that innovation takes time, but I could hear the shift in his voice. The patience was running out. After he left, I wandered into the server room and sat on the floor staring at the blinking lights. Rachel found me there, still in my coat. "You can't keep this up," she said. "I'm fine," I answered, though I didn't believe it. "You're not fine," she replied, and she didn't raise her voice. "And we can all see it." I didn't know what to say. The words just wouldn't come. "What if he wins?" I finally whispered. "What if this all disappears?" Rachel sat beside me, leaned her back against the cabinet. "Then we rebuild," she said, "or we build something new, but we don't hand it over." The next morning, Olivia placed a sealed envelope on my desk. No return address, just my name in clean block letters. Inside was a single sheet of paper, a letter from my father. "The family believes there's still a path forward," it read. "Your mother would have wanted peace. Brandon's offer is sound. Accept it, and we can move on together." He signed it, Dad. I folded it once and set it in the drawer. At 10:30, I walked into the lobby and saw Brandon already waiting. "I wanted to check in," he said with a smile. "See how my investment is doing, while you still have leverage." He handed me a revised offer, 25% now. The drop wasn't subtle. It was a message. "Think it over," he added, standing to leave. "Before the door closes completely." I didn't answer. I just watched him go. That evening I stayed late. Most of the team had gone home. The building was quiet, the kind of quiet where even the air feels still. I sat at my desk with my father's letter in one hand and my phone in the other. Brandon's number was already pulled up on the screen. One call. That's all it would take. A short conversation, and I could make the pressure stop. I didn't dial. I just sat there. At 7 Huzuri sharp, there was a knock at the door. I thought everyone had left. I called out without looking up. "We're closed." "It's Isabella." I turned and saw her step inside, slowly holding her purse, like it might slip from her fingers. She wasn't dressed for a meeting, just jeans, a soft sweater, and her hair pulled back in a loose tie. Her face looked pale, like she hadn't slept. "Can I come in?" she asked. "I don't have much time." I nodded. She sat across from me and opened her purse. Inside was a USB drive and a few folded documents. She placed them on the desk. "What is this?" I asked. "Internal financials, emails, project notes. All from Carter Strategies," she said. "It's worse than you think." I didn't move, just listened. "They're not stable," she said. They've been bleeding money for months. The Zenith contract was supposed to fix it, but they can't deliver what they promised. They're already weeks behind. She gestured toward the files. Your software, your AI engine. That's the only thing keeping them from defaulting. I watched her closely. Why are you giving me this? She looked down for a moment. Because I believed in them, she said. I thought I was marrying into a family that stood for something. Legacy, integrity. But I can't watch this happen and pretend it's okay. She paused. My dad ran a small manufacturing company in Ohio. He used to say, do the right thing even when no one's looking. Her hands were trembling. I'm not proud it took me this long, but I'm here now. She stood. Don't mention me. Don't even hint where this came from. Just use it. She walked out without another word. I locked the door behind her. 20 minutes later, Rachel arrived, followed by Marcus. I hadn't moved. The documents were still on the desk. Marcus opened the first few pages and scanned quickly. They're deeper in the red than we thought, he said. And look at this. Timeline for Zenith's rollout. They're 4 months in and haven't even started back-end integration. Rachel leaned in. They sold vaporware. Marcus plugged in the USB and opened a file. Here's the specs Doc Brandon submitted. He paused. These are your feature sets, Natalie. The adaptive model, speech mapping, context cues. It's all here. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. We all knew what it meant. They copied your proposal before they tried to buy you out, Rachel said. Marcus leaned forward. They need our tech. Without it, they default. If that happens, the penalties from Zenith alone could gut them. Just then, Marcus's phone buzzed. He read the message, then looked up. Elena fixed it, he said. The scaling issue. She found a bottleneck in the processor load. It's resolved. I turned to him. It's stable. He nodded. And it's faster than we expected. I stood. How long to get it demo ready by morning? I looked at Rachel. Call Alexander. Tell him we have something to show him. We didn't sleep that night. The office lights stayed on while Marcus and Rachel pieced together a briefing deck from scratch. Elena worked through the night finalizing the patch to the adaptive model. I sat with a legal pad rewriting our narrative bullet by bullet. By morning, everything was ready. When Alexander Mitchell arrived at 9:50, there was no small talk. He followed us into the conference room, took a seat across from Marcus, and waited. The demo loaded cleanly. No stutters, no delays. The software adapted instantly, adjusting tone logic and phrasing midstream. Marcus walked him through the upgrades while I watched for signs, raised eyebrows, scribbled notes, hesitation. But Alexander just leaned forward and listened. When the final prompt ran and the system adjusted to a multi-user scenario in real time, he sat back slowly. This is impressive, he said. You've solved contextual interpretation. His voice was steady, but the weight of the words filled the room. Nobody's doing this at this level. We didn't bring up Carter strategies. We didn't mention the rumors. We just let the tech speak. Afterward, he closed his laptop and nodded once. I'd like to talk investment. Fair terms. Based on your actual valuation, not what your competitors are whispering. He stood, shook my hand, and left. It wasn't flashy, but it was solid. That afternoon, Diana dropped by. I told her everything Isabella's visit, the documents, the timelines buried inside Carter strategies. She didn't flinch, just listened. When I finished, she sat back in the chair across from my desk and folded her arms. They've been playing offense, she said. It's time you did the same. I nodded, but she added quietly, not revenge, strategy. That evening, I called the team into the main room. I didn't sugarcoat anything. I told them there had been a coordinated attempt to destabilize us. I told them we'd lost people, lost deals, and nearly lost our footing. But I also told them we weren't folding. We're not out of time, I said. We're just out of patience. And if anyone needs to walk away, I understand. No shame in it. No one moved. Kyle, one of our senior devs, raised a hand. "Jessica called me," he said. "Said she regrets leaving. Said it's chaos over there." A few others nodded quietly. I looked around the room and let the silence hold. "We have a window," I said, "a short one, but enough." The next morning, an anonymous tip landed in a major tech publication. The article didn't name Carter Strategies, but it didn't have to. The wording made it clear a high-profile consulting firm had oversold its AI capabilities and was now scrambling to recover. It spread quickly, especially among the investor community. That same day, we invited Westfield's executive team to a private demonstration. Thomas Bennett brought 2 board members and their CTO. We kept it straightforward. No pitch deck, no storytelling, just results. Marcus ran the demo. The system responded fluidly to layered voice input, handled emotional variation in customer prompts, and resolved queries without delay. The CTO leaned forward. "This exceeds what we initially scoped," he said. Thomas nodded. "We'll be revising the terms." I thanked them and walked them out. That night, I returned home and pulled out a box I hadn't opened in years. Inside was one of my mother's old notebooks, the one she used to fill with ideas when she couldn't sleep. I flipped through pages of sketches, diagrams, half-written questions until one short line caught my eye. "The world doesn't need more people fitting in. It needs people who see what others don't." I left the notebook open on the table. The rest of the week was a blur. We didn't talk about pressure. We talked about milestones. Rachel finalized investor packets. Marcus ran simulations to confirm the new benchmarks. Olivia managed meeting schedules, tracked calls, kept things moving. By Thursday, Alexander returned for a second look. No assistance this time, just him a notepad and a quiet nod as he sat down. Marcus loaded the latest demo. The software handled multiple speakers with precision-interpreted sarcasm correctly and adjusted language for clarity across real-time feedback loops. Alexander didn't speak during the session, just watched, took notes, and nodded to himself. When it ended, we stood near the window while the team reset the equipment. "You've got something no one else has," he said. "It's time to talk numbers." We scheduled a follow-up to finalize the structure. Later that night, I sat alone in the quiet of my office. For the first time in weeks, I didn't reach for my laptop. I picked up my mother's notebook again and read a line I'd missed earlier. "Don't confuse silence with weakness. Some of the strongest decisions are made in quiet." In the morning, Westfield confirmed contract moving forward. They wanted one last meeting to finalize the rollout calendar and walk the executive board through contingencies. Marcus, Rachel, and I flew out the next day. We met in a glass-walled boardroom at Westfield's campus. Thomas opened the meeting. "We've been impressed," he said. "Some board members would like to hear directly about implementation planning." Marcus walked them through our updated timeline. Rachel covered client onboarding. I handled the close. "Our adaptive learning system will reduce resolution time across all service tiers. The model adjusts dynamically, and we've already begun preparing support pathways." The CTO leaned forward. "This kind of processing speed, we haven't seen that from anyone else." I nodded. "They don't have it." We left with a handshake and verbal confirmation to move forward. On the flight home, Rachel leaned back in her seat and closed her eyes. "That's done for now," I said. She didn't open her eyes, but she nodded. The next morning, Olivia handed me a small envelope as I walked in. "This was on your desk." Inside was a printout, an article from TechWire. The headline questioned Carter Strategies' deliverables. No mention of us. Just unnamed sources, delivery failures, unstable internal structures. Within hours, 3 other outlets picked up the story. Diana called that afternoon. "You've changed the conversation," she said. "Now they're the ones trying to explain." That evening, Brandon called. I let it ring twice before picking up. "We should talk," he said. "Things have gotten complicated." I didn't say anything. "Carter Strategies is open to a joint solution model," he added. not acquisition, a shared offering. I kept my voice level. Rachel will check my calendar. He started to reply, but I ended the call. The pressure wasn't gone, but it had shifted. By Monday morning, Rachel had blocked off the calendar for a full day of investor follow-ups. I sat across from Alexander and Diana in our largest conference room, the windows open to let in the late spring air. The agreement was verbal for now, but the structure was sound: a direct investment fair valuation, no control clauses, and a rollout plan built around performance. We all agreed to move quickly. At noon, Rachel brought in lunch for the whole team. No speeches, just food, space to breathe, and a quiet kind of relief. When I stood to thank everyone, I didn't talk about the past few weeks or the pressure. I said one thing: you built something hard to explain, and you believed in it when it was easier not to. That weekend, I walked through the neighborhood where I'd grown up, past the old school where my mother used to volunteer, past the park where she once taught me to ride a bike in the middle of a Tuesday afternoon homework, forgotten. I sat on the bench under the sycamore tree near the playground, listening to the wind move through the branches. My phone buzzed once in my coat pocket. I didn't look right away. When I did, it was a message from Olivia Call from Westfield Legal Contract, ready to sign Monday. The contract signing took place quietly in our main conference room. No press, no ribbon cutting, just a few members of the Westfield legal team, their lead developer, and a handful of ours. The final number came in at $45,015,000 more than we'd expected. Faster rollout, full integration, exclusive licensing on their customer experience platform. When Thomas Bennett stood and shook my hand, he said, "This solution changes how we serve our clients." After the room cleared, Rachel lingered. She closed her laptop and gave me a small nod before stepping out. I stayed behind for a few more minutes, letting it settle in. By Thursday, Tech Future ran a full feature on our platform. The headline called it a new standard in adaptive AI communication. The article broke down our emotional language processing, real-time adjustment capacity, and scalable architecture. The phones started ringing. Old investors, new ones, venture firms that had ghosted us 2 months earlier now wanted meetings. Rachel filtered the calls. Marcus started planning for scale. Olivia drafted a waitlist system for partnership inquiries. That Friday afternoon, my office phone rang again. It was Brandon. "The Westfield deal was impressive," he said. "We're prepared to explore a joint venture. Carter Strategies has market presence. Novatech has the tech. There's opportunity here." I didn't reply. "We could have avoided all this," he added. "It didn't need to get so messy." I kept my voice even. "Have Rachel review the terms when they're submitted in writing." Then I ended the call. 3 days later, his assistant reached out on my father's behalf, requested a formal meeting, no mention of family, just time, date, location. I arrived 10 minutes late on purpose. He was behind his desk reviewing something on a yellow pad. When I walked in, he looked up and motioned toward the chair across from him. "I've seen the Westfield rollout framework," he said. "It's inventive." I waited. Brandon showed me the specs. "It's a strong solution." I nodded once. He didn't apologize, but he came close. "I may have misjudged Novatech's viability." He leaned back slightly. "Your mother saw it long before I did. She always said your thinking was different. I thought that meant unpredictable. I see now it meant valuable." I stood, and so did he. "If you ever want to revisit the partnership discussion," he said quietly, "Carter Strategies would still be interested." "I'll let Rachel know," I replied. That evening, we held a gathering at the office. Rachel transformed the floor into something halfway between a party and a project retrospective. She had printed posters of our milestones, our first client, our first prototype, our first investor check. Marcus got a moment of quiet recognition during the toast. To the ones who stayed, I said, who worked when it was hard, who built when things felt broken. You are Novatech. There wasn't loud cheering, just that kind of applause that lingers longer than the sound. Near the end of the night, Alexander stopped by. No paperwork, no follow-up questions, just a bottle of scotch and a nod. Your technology caught my eye, he said, but your clarity, that's what held my interest. He paused, then added, if you ever decide to take this public or go enterprise scale, let me know. I will, I said. 2 months later, I was invited to give the keynote at Tech Forward, the industry's biggest innovation conference. Thousands of developers, researchers, and investors in one place. I walked on stage in a navy suit I didn't need anyone's approval to wear, carrying only a simple slide deck and a few quiet memories. I didn't tell them about the sabotage or the rumors or the acquisition offers dressed as lifelines. I told them about what we built, about listening when no one else was, about staying clear when the noise got loud. I said innovation doesn't always follow the expected path. Sometimes the best thing you bring to the table is a different way of seeing the problem. The standing ovation lasted almost a minute. Near the front row, I saw my father, and next to him, Brandon. Neither of them stood, but they were there. And that meant something. Not everything, but something. 6 months after the Tech Forward keynote, Novatech's valuation passed $250 million. The rollout at Westfield had gone smoother than we expected. Their board greenlit full integration for customer service, and a month later expanded the contract to include logistics and billing. Their executive team cited measurable gains in satisfaction metrics, faster resolution rates, and lower call abandonment. Word traveled. By spring, enterprise clients began lining up. We doubled in size, 78 employees across 3 offices. The wait list for implementation packages included 3 Fortune 500 companies. Jessica Thompson was the first to return. She emailed one evening asking to reconnect, then arrived 2 days later with her resignation letter from Carter Strategies already signed. That first week back, she stayed late every night, even after we told her not to. That place was all process, she said quietly to Marcus. No clarity, no vision. Greg followed a few weeks later. Michelle reached out not long after. Each said something different, but the message was the same. They hadn't left Novatech because they stopped believing in the product. They left because they weren't sure we'd make it. Now they knew better. And after seeing the reality inside Carter Strategies' missed deadlines, disjointed roadmaps, fractured teams, they were ready to come back to something that worked. In honor of what we'd survived, I launched the Elaine Carter Innovation Scholarship, named for my mother. It was created for young women in tech who left college to pursue original ideas. No GPA requirement, no letters of recommendation, just a real working concept. Our first recipient was 20 brilliant and razor-sharp. She'd left MIT to develop predictive models for climate-based flood risk. No degree, no corporate ties, just a working prototype and a clear voice. I read her application on a quiet Saturday morning and knew right away. We flew her in that June. When she walked the floor and asked one of our engineers about memory optimization without hesitation, I saw something familiar in her eyes. Later, I handed her a sealed envelope with the scholarship confirmation inside. "This is for people who see the world differently," I said. She smiled. "That's the only way I know how to see it." The following week, Rachel and I met Diana at a small bistro a few blocks from our old co-working space. We ordered lunch and talked numbers. After reviewing the latest growth figures, Diana set down her fork and said, "You're not just scaling a company, you're changing the narrative." I glanced at Rachel. She raised her glass. "To dropouts," Diana smiled, "to founders." That night, I walked the hallways of our new headquarters. Floor-to-ceiling windows looked out over the city skyline. I paused near my office door and turned to look back. Every light was still on. Olivia was typing final edits on a policy update. Kyle was running simulations on the test server. Beth and Marcus were reviewing notes from a platform audit. I stepped into my office, closed the door, and opened the drawer where I kept the folder Isabella had handed me months ago. Inside was the Zenith contract timeline, missed milestones, false specs, unmet conditions. Tucked in the corner was the same sticky note she'd included the night she showed up unannounced. Use this however you need to. Just don't let it go to waste. I didn't move. I didn't call a reporter. I didn't draft a response. I closed the folder and slid it back into the drawer. We didn't need it anymore. The next morning, Rachel brought in a box of updated marketing materials, new notebooks, polished one-pagers, and a refreshed internal mission statement. On the cover of each folder was our new tagline, "Trail Creators, Not Trail Followers." She placed one in front of me. "You said it on stage," she said. "We just made it official." That afternoon, I walked through the main development wing. Desks were full. Dashboards were active. Conversations were focused, but steady. No edge in the air, no sense of worry. That's when it hit me. We weren't surviving anymore. We were building. 6 months after Westfield's final rollout review, I watched our newest class of hires set up for orientation. Welcome kits on the table, charging cables along the wall. On the projector screen behind them was our onboarding motto, a line from one of my mother's journals Rachel had found last winter. Innovation belongs to those who see differently, not just those who are seen. Jessica was at the front of the room explaining our adaptive learning framework to a group of new interns. Marcus was reviewing product milestones with our incoming project manager. Rachel was prepping slides for the next board session. No one was looking at me. And for the first time in years, I didn't need them to. We hadn't heard from Brandon in weeks. The last we knew, Carter Strategies was quietly restructuring. The Zenith contract had been reassigned. A few of their employees had left the industry altogether. We didn't chase updates. We had too much to build. The new onboarding group was still setting up when Olivia walked into my office with a manila envelope. No sender listed, just my name written cleanly across the front. Inside was a printout from a respected tech reporter subject line, already circled in blue pen, "Sources confirm Carter Strategies in breach of contract with Zenith." I didn't flinch. I read the article once. Then I slid it into the drawer with Isabella's documents and closed it for good. That same week, I met with Diana and Alexander to finalize our long-term investment structure. By the time the call ended, we had our terms locked in and the board expansion timeline mapped out. Rachel ordered lunch for the entire team, a quiet celebration. No clapping, no speeches, just relief shared in silence. 3 days later, Jessica knocked on my office door with a new idea for our internal knowledge base. She'd been gathering feedback from the engineering team and wanted to streamline onboarding for new hires. I watched her sketch out the framework on the whiteboard and remembered the day she walked out contract in hand. Now she was here, sleeves rolled up, building with us again. Greg came back next. He'd been freelancing since leaving Carter Strategies, but the moment we posted a role for systems architecture, he reached out. "I miss the momentum here," he said, "and the honesty." Michelle followed 6 weeks later. Her email was short. "If there's a place for me, I'd like to return." We brought her in on the platform expansion project. She didn't miss a step. One afternoon, I asked Jessica what changed. Why now? She glanced across the dev wing, where the new cohort was deep in code reviews. "It wasn't that I didn't believe in Novatech," she said. "I just didn't think we'd survive. But after seeing how they operate over there, it's all smoke and mirrors. Nothing connects. No one leads." Each one of them had a version of the same story. The reality inside Carter Strategies had unraveled faster than expected, missed rollouts, clients requesting audits, internal conflicts they weren't allowed to talk about. Once the Zenith contract collapsed, they knew it wouldn't recover. As we grew, I watched something else shift quietly across our team. People no longer glanced over their shoulders. They asked questions out loud, pushed back on designs, made decisions without waiting for approval. There was space now, room for ideas, for disagreement, for clarity. In late summer, we invited the first class of Elaine Carter Innovation Scholars to visit. 5 women, all founders, all college dropouts. One was 19, working on a prototype that used AI-generated heat maps for real-time flood prediction. She had bootstrapped her way through hardware tests and lived out of her car for 2 months to fund development. During her demo, she paced through our main testing suite, explaining how she'd built her model from scratch with open-source libraries. Rachel leaned over and whispered, "She reminds me of someone." I smiled but didn't say who. When the young woman finished, I handed her a small envelope with her grant inside. "This is for people who don't wait for permission to build," I said. She nodded. I never knew how to wait. That night, Rachel and I grabbed dinner near our old shared workspace. We hadn't sat still in weeks. After reviewing our growth projections and partner pipeline, she set her phone down. "You know," she said, "this used to feel like survival. Now it feels like momentum." I didn't respond right away, but I knew she was right. As we walked back toward the office, Olivia met us at the entrance with a slim envelope. She held it out. "Thought you'd want to see this one yourself." Inside was a formal request from Brandon's assistant, a meeting. The subject line was typed in all caps, "Joint Venture Proposal." I read it once and handed it to Rachel. Thoughts. She scanned the page, then folded it in half and slipped it into her bag. "I'll draft a response," she said. That weekend I visited my mother's grave for the first time in over a year. I brought a single wildflower and one of our company folders, the new ones with our mission statement on the cover. Trail creators, not trail followers. I sat on the grass and stayed there a while. No monologue, no big declarations, just a quiet acknowledgement of everything it had taken to get here. Back at the office, Olivia had framed the quote Rachel pulled from my mother's journal. It hung in the lobby, now just above the reception desk. "Innovation belongs to those who see differently, not just those who are seen." Every so often, I'd catch new team members pausing to read it on their way in. The news about Carter's strategies continued to trickle in. Quiet restructuring, contract losses, a new interim CEO. Brandon hadn't reached out since the proposal. I hadn't responded. We had too much to do. The week after the article about Carter's strategies made the rounds, I met with Rachel and Marcus in our small glass conference room to set the next quarter's priorities. No victory talk, just schedules, handoffs, and a plan to keep our promises. When we wrapped, I walked the floor. Jessica was mentoring 2 interns on our speech mapping tools. Greg was reviewing a systems audit with Beth. Olivia was at reception answering a visitor's question under the framed line from my mother's journal. The building felt steady in a way I hadn't felt in a long time. 2 days later, Brandon requested a short meeting through his assistant. I agreed to 15 minutes in our lobby. He arrived on time, tired around the eye suit, pressed like always. "The joint venture stands," he said. "Market presence meets best-in-class tech." I listened, then shook my head. "We're focused on our partners," I said. "If Carter Strategies needs a vendor, Rachel can connect you with our enterprise team." He held my gaze for a moment and nodded once. No raised voices, no parting shot. He left quietly, and I walked back to the dev wing without looking over my shoulder. That Friday, my father called. He asked to stop by for 10 minutes. He came alone. We sat in my office with the door open to the gentle noise of keyboards and soft conversation. "You were right about the model," he said, "and about the pace of change." He paused, then added, "Your mother would have liked this place. I didn't try to fill the space." He looked toward the window and stood. "If you ever want to talk, not business, just talk," he said, "you know where to find me." He left his card on the desk, though I already knew the number. That weekend, we hosted our first small gathering for the Elaine Carter Scholars. 5 women sat with our engineers and asked the kind of questions that make people straighten in their chairs. After the round table, I stayed behind to tidy the conference room. One of the scholars lingered at the door and said, "I didn't think there was a place for me until today." I handed her a spare notebook and told her to write down every problem she couldn't stop thinking about. She smiled and slipped it into her bag like a promise. In the months that followed, Westfield expanded again. Our support model held. The wait list stayed full, and the calls from former doubters grew shorter and easier. We still had long nights and stubborn bugs, but they felt like the work honest, solvable shared. I kept my mother's notebook on a shelf behind my desk, pages marked where her lines had become ours. Don't confuse silence with weakness. See what others don't. Justice didn't arrive as a headline or a single moment. It showed up in small, durable ways, teams that trusted each other, partners who stayed people, returning because they wanted to build. It looked less like winning and more like belonging in the life we chose. I don't need a seat at anyone else's table anymore. We built one here, and there's room at it for those who lead with clarity and do the work with care. If you've ever been told you were too different to succeed, I hope you keep going. Protect your health. Choose good people and let the results answer where words fall short. The road won't always be loud, but quiet paths still get you home. Thank you for staying with me through this story. If any part of it felt familiar, I'd love to hear where you're listening from and what you've built through hard seasons. And if you want more true stories told in this calm corner, you're welcome to subscribe and sit with us again.